Hello and welcome to the India Today Mumbai conclave. We've heard at length from the Indian government about the success of the G20 Leaders Summit. To get an outside perspective on how the rest of the world deconstructed what we saw in New Delhi during the G20 Summit, we've got here in Mumbai on special request the High Commissioner of United Kingdom, Alexander Ellis. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you.
It's a great pleasure to be back. Thank you.
I want to start by asking you about your and your country's impressions of the G20 summit. In India, the government has declared this to be a grand success. There was consensus on the joint declaration that came out of the Delhi summit. In the way that you see it, in the journey of the G20, how do you assess the Delhi summit?
I think you're absolutely right to put it in the context of the G20 overall. I think really India broke the mold on what a G20 presidency is, and I feel for subsequent presidencies because India sets a standard. Getting an agreement at the summit was a remarkable achievement. I think very few people thought it was possible, and I think that tells you something about the capability and the craft of the Indian system. I also think it tells you something about Indian power. The kind of planet India is getting bigger, its mass is getting bigger. And so as its gravitational pull, I think, is getting bigger. You can see that in lots of different ways. And countries did not want to get on the wrong side, I think, of the Indian presidency. And so it could achieve something which I wonder if any other country could achieve at the moment, which is we have a very divided world, but to get all those different countries to align behind a single text.
You know, we have some images of Prime Minister Sunak and Akshata Murthy coming to India during the G20 summit, and I'm sure all of you would have seen it as well. Prime Minister Sunak's popularity back home in the context of the elections next year is something that he's working very hard to salvage. But in India, he had smashing popularity. I mean, just pressing all the right buttons. There they are at the Akshardham temple. The Canadian Prime Minister had a different kind of reception. The British Prime Minister was smashing all records. What were you and the High Commission making of the kind of warm reception the son-in-law of India was getting while he was here?
Well, it was amazing to see and amazing to be alongside the Prime Minister and Mrs. Murthy. And it was great that they came together. I think that has a lot of impact when they as a couple are together. And you saw the enormous interest of people here in them. The fact that they are living in number 10 Downing Street, drawing deer, lighting deer and drawing rangoli outside of Downing Street tells you something about my country, which is a very different country from the one I grew up in. That's a fast change, but I think it's a remarkable change. And that attracts interest in the UK, attracts interest here. It actually attracts interest all over the world. And it was wonderful to see. They were very well received here as well. And also, I think they really enjoyed it.
It's very interesting to see how Prime Minister Sunak wears his religion on his kurta.
Yeah.
Most people would be very low-key about it, keep religion as private. In those images from the Akshardham and even what he does back home,
yeah,
whether it's with the cow, and as you said, it says a lot about British politics at this time. For him to be Prime Minister and for it to be acceptable to people at large, how do you see that having changed? Because I studied in the UK. Many people sitting here would have spent a lot of time in the UK. Yeah. It really has changed since.
It really has. What's so interesting in the UK is that it's just not an issue. The Prime Minister, I also admire him because he doesn't sort of play one game at home and one game abroad. He just is himself. He's completely relaxed about it, open about it, and the response in the UK, I think, tells you something about how much the country has changed. It just does not figure as an issue in the UK. What they look for from the Prime Minister is what every country looks for from the Prime Minister, which is competence, leadership, and so forth, and that's as it should be. And I'm very proud, actually, to represent a country which has changed so much. And it's not just the Prime Minister. If you saw King Charles's coronation, in a way, the kind of core of the British state, you had people from different faiths, artifacts from different faiths. It was something quite extraordinary to see, and that tells you something about the country I live in, or country I'm from.
And it gives Indians, many sitting here and otherwise, some level of vicarious pleasure that a son-in-law of India is trying to fix the broken British state.
We could unpack that statement. I think that Rishi Sunak is as British as I am, and what he has is some style and taste and culture which is very identifiable here. He's a Hindu, practicing Hindu. He loves his laddus, I discovered, and was enjoying a few when he was here. But he is just, he reflects.
You were telling us that he has laddus with most meals?
Oh God, he does like a kaju katli. Actually, we were having a very good kaju katli when we were preparing for a meeting, but he's both a leader, but he's also reflecting a change in British society, and you see it in lots of different ways. And I think we are a stronger, healthier society for that.
And I think it's quite incredible, all jokes aside, because it's taken so many people of Indian origin to go and run American tech companies, and they're doing a stellar job. So it feels really nice, but of course, as you said, he is fully British, and the British people have accepted him, and that's most important. Everybody else is just on the sidelines commenting on the match, but they're not playing the match. I want to come to the tricky issue of Khalistan, where we saw, quite disturbingly, the Indian High Commissioner, Mr. Doraiswamy, in Scotland getting heckled by some separatists. And from what I hear, those separatists haven't been arrested, and from the reports that I read from the Scottish media, they don't seem to have anything big happened.
So something happened which absolutely should not have happened. And our ministers have been very clear about that, both publicly and in private. You have to put individual incidents within a context. First of all, that context is the extraordinary diversity of the UK now. We've just been talking about in relation to the Prime Minister, and the extraordinary achievements of the community of Indian heritage in the UK, which is frankly fantastic. About 1.5, 1.6 million people achieving in every walk of life, represented in our Parliament, represented in all sorts of fields in the British state. So that's a great thing. Second thing is that extremism is an issue in many countries, and actually, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, when he was here, was very clear: we do not tolerate extremism in any form. There are always going to be a few folk who are going to be at the extreme ends. And how we deal with that, I think we deal with it in different ways. We do arrest people, or I should say the police have the powers to arrest people and exercise them. We had a demonstration outside the Indian High Commission on Monday, I think. Somebody was arrested there. Actually, there was an arrest excuse me, when we had the demonstration back in March, I think it was.